好多人认为种族歧视是源于处于强势的人的种族优越心态。为什么会有这种心态呢？您是否读过西方的流行文化？其实这也是一大根源。
The surge in violent incidents has forced more people to sit up and take notice of anti-Asian hate. But racism isn't always so overt. Sometimes it's considered entertainment. As Liam Vu explains, Asian stereotypes have long been a Hollywood go-to.
Why do Chinese girls taste different from all other girls?
Darling, I give you very best duck.
Exotic?
I will bring desolation.
Villainous? A joke. This is what happens when film and television use stereotypes to simplify Asian identity. Back in the 1950s and 60s, white actors like Marlon Brando and Mickey Rooney would play Asian caricatures. Off-screen, the model minority myth took hold, suggesting all Asians were inherently smart, successful, and submissive.
When you grow up in a society where you don't see yourself reflected on the screens, you don't really think much of it because you kind of go, well, yeah, it figures. But what you're taught subliminally is that your stories don't matter.
Why is it important to have proper representation in pop culture?
Media is so powerful in the sense that it really does shape a society. For a generation, you had people who were raised to believe that Asians were the other, that it's okay to make fun of them, that they often are very odd or very funny, and it made it socially acceptable to laugh at an entire race or entire group of people.
여보! What's Netflix and that chill?
Sex.
How you know that?
Paul Sun-hyung Lee is a Korean-Canadian success story, best known as Appa on Kim's Convenience and Captain Carson Teva in The Mandalorian. And like many in the community, the rise of anti-Asian hate has left him upset and angry.
It's heartbreaking, it's shocking, it's devastating. It makes you wonder why. You shouldn't have to say, don't perpetuate acts of violence against people, against Asian people. I'm afraid for my parents, I'm afraid for my kids. What's gonna happen to them? I mean, basically what's being shown is it's open season.
Stop Asian hate! Stop stereotyping us!
Mortal Kombat star Ludi Lin took a stand last month at the rally on the steps of the Vancouver Art Gallery.
I know that the first Asians came over 400 years ago to North America, and they were commissioned to build boats. So the first thing I said was, we came over here not to break, but to build. We did that, but I felt that we were unheard. We can't forget about this. We need to keep talking nonstop. We need to talk tirelessly and then act on it.
Asian representation in media has improved considerably in recent years. Crazy Rich Asians made $238 million US in 2018. 2 years later, Steven Yeun is making history as the first Asian American to be nominated at the Oscars for Best Actor. And this fall, Kim's Convenience star Simu Liu is making his debut as the Marvel superhero Shang-Chi.
I think what we're all looking for is actual measurable successes and the doors opening and that happening so that we can set our communities up to succeed. Grow as an industry, grow as a society, grow as a culture to do all that so that all the stories are told and that everybody has a place at the table.
From Hollywood to history, Canada actually has a storied past of anti-Asian racism, one the government has worked to rectify.
And to take us through that journey, we called on the first visible minority ever to be appointed Governor General. The Right Honorable Adrienne Clarkson has a remarkable story of her own, of overcoming and belonging after arriving in Canada in 1942 as a refugee.
We thought we were very settled in Hong Kong, and unfortunately the war happened. We were thrown out. We got on a Red Cross ship. We were taken to Canada because my father was a relatively successful young businessman, and he had done work with the Canadian Trade Commission. And we were treated as in a way, different, but very well. And yes, there was the occasional thing where people would say, chinky, chinky Chinaman to you, but my father said, You know, those are silly things that people do because they don't know any better. I think it was just racism. They're yellow people with little slit eyes, and they have awful habits like smoking opium and binding ladies' feet. We had a very good experience. So when I look at anti-Asian things in Canada, I think of the larger picture. The 1923 legislation, which is anti-Chinese, the kind of stuff that you would read about the Yellow Peril. The Chinese Exclusion Act, it came with a head tax. I don't know what the act actually was, but it came with, it was a barrier to entry which was economic, which is you had to pay a certain amount of money in order to come into Canada to work. And I was listed there as Adrienne Poy, 9 years old, which I was at the time. Certain parts of the country became much more exclusionary than others. British Columbia is, and it was known in China. Well, the Japanese, basically, they were very prosperous on the West Coast. And after Pearl Harbor, people were very, very anxious. The Japanese were dispossessed of everything and had to live in terrible conditions in the interior of BC. And then after the war, they were forbidden to go back to BC within 100 miles of the coast. I think what's wonderful about Canada is that it's capable of change. People don't necessarily love each other. You know, all you need is love. I don't believe that. All you need is people to understand that you are a human being and they are a human being, and you may not like them, you may not want to stand in the bus shelter with them, but they have every right to life in this country as you do. Every single right as you do.
So for 2 years, I was a waitress, and my manager, whenever he'd see me, he'd say ching ching chong, like that. And at the time, I would just laugh along with him.
A woman came in and verbally abused me. She told me her views about the onset of the pandemic, about Wuhan, and about Asian people. She accused me of being the problem, and her ultimate solution was to get rid of us, to send us all home. I'm Canadian. I was born here.
As a kid, chink and Chinese chicken were the popular names at school, in summer camp, and yes, that Bare Naked Lady song did not help. Overseas in France, in 2016, I even got this and cheap chink thrown at me. Did I ever defend myself then? Not really, because I didn't know how to. But I did last year when I was called out a couple times in grocery stores for the reason people had to wear masks and live in fear.
It's not always easy to open up about uncomfortable experiences.
And one of the only Asian Americans ever to play in the NBA tells us he only recently found his voice.
Sensational play for Jeremy Lin. 8 points and 9 rebounds, and Lin!
Honestly, I couldn't think of a better city to be able to bring a championship to.
Linsanity launched him into stardom almost 10 years ago, and Jeremy Lin has continued to break down barriers. He became the first Asian American NBA champion with the Toronto Raptors in 2019, and amid the wave of violent attacks against his community, he decided to finally speak up.
Over the last couple of weeks, we've really seen you use your platform and your voice to address a lot of the atrocities that we've been seeing across North America. How have you been feeling? Because I know it must be emotionally exhausting too.
Yeah, you know, I think especially when everything happened in Atlanta, that was really heavy. And that was took a couple of days in terms of conversations and a lot of things and just processing. So I kind of evolved from a place of like feeling really unsure and surprised and sad and angry to a place of really believing and hoping and knowing that, you know, the work that everybody is doing is making a difference.
You've come out and spoken about some of your experiences on the court, including a recent incident being called coronavirus on the court.
Yeah, to be completely honest, you know, it was in the heat of the game, and it was in the middle of the game, and then I've been called far worse. And so it kind of, honestly, just kind of slipped off my shoulder in terms of just like, I was a little bit like, whoa, what just happened? Oh, okay. But I think that comes from maybe, being called a chink and Chinese import and can you see the scoreboard with those, slanty eyes and stuff like that. I've heard a lot of things through the years and it's been something that I've grown up with. And so by now I kind of have my ways of coping with things.
A way of coping with things for a lot of people has been to not talk about it and to brush it off and laugh it off. I think through these conversations, a lot of people have been realizing that this is not okay and that it's been built up and we've gotten to this point now.
Not talking about it is definitely not the answer, especially now. We're seeing so many studies about mental health and what people are going through. This is something that everybody has to deal with, and a lot of Asians and Asian Americans are really, really scared right now.
I want to ask you about your time with the Raptors. You've broken a lot of barriers, and being the first Asian American to win an NBA championship, we get to wear that pride. Thank you for that with the Toronto Raptors. Your time here, did you ever feel any of that, and was it different on this side of the border?
My time in Toronto was amazing. I didn't feel any discrimination when I was playing in Toronto. It was such a diverse city, and it just felt like a melting pot. And there was just so many different cultures. The one thing that I have been thinking a lot about recently is the fact that when we talk about the violence and the things that we're seeing and the discrimination and the racism across North America, we're seeing them in a lot of actually diverse metropolitan type cities.
You're bringing up a really good point there, because I think a lot of people see Canada and a lot of these big cities in Canada, like Vancouver and like Toronto, as really diverse and accepting places. But the facts and the stats that are coming out of these places over the last while too have been pretty alarming. Where do we go from here?
We have seen an incredible, intense mobilization of Asian influencers, Asian celebrities, or prominent people in the Asian circle that are mobilized to try to figure out what can we do, how can we help, how can we use our platforms, how can we speak up. Having said that, are we going to change everybody's viewpoint, or is everyone going to be listening? No, but more people are, and I genuinely believe that, and I think that's a great place to start.
Well, this special is just a start for us too. We'll continue digging into the issues and sharing on our platforms.
And as we head into Asian Heritage Month, we want to leave you with this final thought. We've focused this show on racism against the East Asian community. But of course, we're not alone. We know very well that people of all colors face bigotry and hatred every single day.
Racism hurts our entire society, and that means it is everybody's fight. We have to stand up with each other and for each other. Thanks for watching, everyone. See you again soon.
本台这次同 Global News 合作的潜行的仇恨专题特辑，除了是作为亚裔传统乐的献礼之外，更希望华人社区可以藉着以上的分析，深入了解问题的根源，并且积极的面对，勇于发声，为建立一个公平和谐的社会共同努力。多谢大家收看，各位观众，晚安。